You call it a spending plan or you call it a budget, it is really a way to identify the money that is coming in, the money that is going out, exactly how much you have left and what you can do with it. In today's live stream, we're going to be going through the spending plan and kind of breaking it out, talking it through. If you have any questions, definitely drop them in chat and we will address them as we're going through there. So again, like I was saying with the spending plan, it really has a purpose of where your money is coming from, where exactly your money is going, and putting it all together. Now, majority of people that I do financial counseling with do not have a spending plan, do not have a budget. They do not have anything at all in place to know exactly where their money is going and what they're spending it on. And if you don't know where it is going, you can't really repurpose it or reallocate it to where it needs to be going when it comes to investing, when it comes to savings, when it comes to debt repayment, which is the big reason why I wanted to do this stream tonight. So let's go through and start with the basics. Now, this actually started a while ago. I had a master when I was taking my master's program. We had a finance class, and our finance class kind of broke it down similar to what this is step number one, collecting your expenses. Now, of course, this is going to look at the last 3 to 6 months of discretionary spending. And we are looking for things that are going to be the set expenses, things that are going to be the variable expenses. There's also going to be a point where the debt repayment, things like that. What is going on? Jordan is here. Thank you for joining us, Jordan. But like we we're saying, going through this is exactly what we did. So in my class, we went through, we brought in 3 months of bank statements. So what this included was credit card statements, bank statements, payroll. So we actually brought in every 2 weeks for our payroll. We literally brought in anything that was financial related that you were paying, whether it was child support, alimony, back payments, collection accounts, anything in its entirety we put into this expense plan that we kind of came up with. That way we could have a budgeting plan. Now, of course, having all of the data at your fingertips is important because you can identify some red flags right off of the bat. When we started this course, we listed 3 things. That's right. We broke it down to 3 things that we're going to focus on that we wanted to accomplish in our finance class. Of course, for me, it was getting ready for retirement. It was purchasing a house at that time because we didn't have a house at that point. Then, of course, saving for education. We knew we wanted children, and there would actually be a point where we would have to start saving for that education as well as the debt repayment. I feel like a majority of people nowadays are so in debt, they're at the point that they're running out of money in their entirety. We're starting to see delinquency rates go up in the kind of middle lower class, about the 60,000 a year or less. We're really seeing the burden with the increase in expenses, the increase in rent, the increase in pretty much everything, insurance, even rates. If you're buying something new, the cost of things are just astronomical in relationship to how much that salary is actually increasing. And of course, you couple that with credit card debt and everything else, and that is it. It is a sinking ship at that point. Now, of course, breaking this down, we're going to talk about a lot of different things, especially when it comes to credit and debit. Now, that is something that a lot of people don't really realize is paying with a credit card and paying with a debit card, even though you may be purchasing the exact same thing, paying with a credit card, individuals spend about 18% more per year. So on an annual basis, about 18% more utilizing a credit card than a debit card. It goes back to the Dave Ramsey with the psychological factor of when they're using a credit card, there's no relationship to essentially how much money you have and how much money you have availability to. Where with your debit card, when the money is gone, you can no longer use that card, which is very similar to cash. Now, the cash system and the debit card do kind of go hand in hand because, of course, once you use your debit card and the money is out on your debit card, you can't use it anymore. That is it. You can't overspend. For majority of us, some institutions let you, but it's at a super, super high cost to actually overdraw your account. There's a lot of fees that can be in there. Credit unions and banks both charge fees. There's fees if you use your own money, which is the reason why I recommend really keeping a very, very solid track of this. Now, of course, if you pay with cash, there's a lot of people that still do pay with cash, gathering receipts, gathering bills, in looking at both the monthly kind of bills that you have and also the periodic bills. So there are a lot of things. For me, for instance, we pay our auto insurance every 6 months. We pay it in full. So making sure that you are tallying those expenses when you start getting into collecting everything. And there also are a few that we might pay on an annual basis because a lot of memberships, things of that nature, you might pay on an annual basis, which I know I do with StreamYard and Streamlabs and stuff like that. I pay it for an entire year because, of course, if you're prepaying for an entire year, you get a very, very healthy discount, which again, we can kind of look at. Now, of course, once you have those collected, this was kind of phase one, getting everything together, knowing our income, knowing our expenses. Then we start categorizing the expenses. This is really the thing where you can look at your habits, you can look at your patterns, you can split your expenses into a multitude of categories, which of course are going to be kind of similar in some points. When you start looking at something like, let's say, a house, that can include, your rent or your mortgage, that could include your utilities, that could include your insurance. You could put a lot of things kind of into the one spending category that we're talking about. And of course, this could be broken into a couple other categories. But I do caution you is when you start putting things and really fixing it into one single category, it gets a lot more difficult to move those levers kind of in and out, or, trying to lower your expenses. Some people do like a food category, they'll do an entertainment category, and ultimately those might be too broad for a majority of people to really break down depending on the category. Now, of course, some of the very common categories we see: home expenses. That is one. Again, this is going to be the cost of your rent or your mortgage. You're looking at including your utilities in here. And I would honestly, if this is the first time that you're doing a spending plan or a budget, breaking it down into line items. So if you look at the home expenses, you could do the mortgage. If it includes the insurance, great. You only have your mortgage payment, but you could do everything: your DTE, your consumers, your Comcast, if you have cable. You could do your television if you have that. You could really break down everything that falls into line items in the expenses. Because of course, when you systematically look at this, when we start getting into cutting costs or looking at possibly getting things lower, there's always a lot of room for negotiation when it comes to insurance, when it comes to possibly refinancing, getting a lower rate for some things, or there's a lot, again, to kind of play with there. Second category we look at is credit cards and loan payments. Now this, again, I would really keep it into two separate buckets. Reason being, credit cards are bad, which I would put in one bucket. Loan payments, I would put in another. Now with loan payments, we're talking about boats and RVs. It could be cars. It could be unsecured lending. Anything that is a fixed rate, fixed term, make sure you put it in the loan payments. And of course, don't forget the pay-as-you-go things. Now, if you've seen any studies or seen what a lot of the government was kind of reporting, when you look at like companies like Affirm that have the pay over time, you pay it off in 4 payments, 6 payments, 12 payments, whatever. Those are not being reported as consumer debt. So there is a big kind of black hole with this buy now, pay later fad that is going on. Ton of companies are on the bandwagon because of course they're making a ton of money doing it. And essentially you're just extenuating your debt. And I've seen people who had half a dozen buy now, pay later things between Best Buy, Walmart, a lot of other companies that do this. And essentially you're kicking your payments down the road, but the payments sometimes not only come with interest, but they can also come with a big upfront price tag for doing these. Now, continuing down the categories, eating out, again, goes into one category separate from groceries. Transportation, you could see if there is transportation cost, this could include like your auto insurance. This could also include your gas. So remember to really calculate that. For a lot of people, especially where I am, where people will commute, you might be dropping $80, $100, $150, depending on your vehicle, per month as a gas expense. And of course, that also doesn't include if you're including any maintenance costs in there, if you're including, oil changes that you're getting every 6 to 12 months, you have to start adding a lot of stuff in there. Then, of course, one of the big and most important buckets is healthcare and kid care. So, of course, when it comes to healthcare, making sure if you have eligibility for HSA accounts that you do have health insurance, but also making sure that you're setting money aside for healthcare outside of what you normally have to pay. Because again, this can really be detrimental to a budget if you start getting into the healthcare and essentially you don't have enough money to cover what the expenses are. Now, when we get into kids costs and pet costs, those two, again, can have a huge variability depending on where they are. But there's also other things you have to think about in these buckets: gifts, donations, and then, of course, entertainment. Now, when we think of some budgeting methods like the 50-30-20, the zero-based budgeting, which again, we'll get into in a little bit, it can really make a really big difference when it comes to the classifications of the expenses, because not only are we breaking them down into these common categories that we see, but they're going to go into two kind of subcategories, which are going to be fixed expenses and variable expenses. Now, the fixed expenses, once you get through a budget, once you get through a spending plan, it is going to be very easy to set all of your fixed expenses. When again, you look at those regular loans, you look at your auto loans, maybe you have some unsecured loans, maybe you have a mortgage, maybe you have rent. Majority of those are going to be fixed expenses, meaning there's not going to be any variation from month to month. So what you're paying, let's say $1,200 in rent, chances are for the next 2 or 3 months, it is going to remain the exact same. We also see that usually with insurance bills, not a huge variation or fluctuation from kind of month to month, especially if you're paying, kind of on a regular basis. Now, when it comes to some of the heavy variable expenses, monthly groceries, clothing purchases, gifts, entertainment, things like that, again, when it comes to the variable expenses, they can vary greatly, which is kind of crazy to think. But again, you have to get a control of this and have to know exactly when you're looking at this plan. Now, of course, when we get everything kind of written down, it is time to review. Look closely at the fixed costs, look at your variable expenses. Variable expenses, of course, will change a lot more often and will have probably the largest, most significant impact of your budget. And this is where we start the evaluation process. So we got all of our expenses together. We categorize them all out, which honestly, when I did this in my class, we did it through an Excel spreadsheet. We just kind of built it out to see where your money was going. And then we broke it down in the next step, which was evaluating your expenses. That is right. We have the needs, we have the wants, and we have the savings. Again, looking at the needs, these are the fundamentals, and you can't really confuse it. A lot of people like to draw really gray lines when it comes to a spending plan on what is a need and what is a want. When it comes to a need, the classification, and it's funny because I have a second grader that is going through needs and wants at 7 years old, which is kind of crazy. But looking at the needs, they are what you need to survive. That is right. This is the survival. What do you need? Do you need a house? Yes, absolutely. You need safety. You need shelter. You need a home, an apartment, a room, whatever it may be. It is a need. Do you need a vehicle? Chances are yes, but that can also fall again kind of in that want category, because do you need a vehicle to take you from point A to point B, which could be a $10,000 car that is reliable, or for some people, the need might be from point A to point B, getting a $50,000, $70,000, $80,000 vehicle, which again fills that exact same need, taking them from point A to point B. And again, this is where a lot of people kind of blend those need and wants categories for really what they are. Do you need food? Yes, you need food to survive. You need shelter to survive. When it comes to the needs, now, of course, there are a lot of things that we like to have in life that are wants, but for a majority of us, you really do have to draw a line in the sand on what is going to be a need and really what level of a need. Same with the want, where, for instance, for you, you could have an apartment that you're paying $800 for, that you're paying $1,200 for, that you're paying $2,000 a month to rent a house. Again, depending on your income, depending on really the structure you want a way to look at this, spending plan can vary greatly because of this. Then, of course, you get into the wants. These are the things that are nice to have. And of course, for myself personally, this is where the frugal side of me really comes out, is because for my want category, I buy things that are a lot more basic and a lot more really set in value. I don't really buy anything that is kind of outside of the norm, that's very flashy. Don't even wear jewelry or watches or nothing like that. But overall, when it comes to the wants, I'm very, very basic when it comes to even the clothing that I wear, because I know the value that it does provide. And in turn, based on me, that is what turns into savings. So for a majority of people, the very last bucket with the savings is going to encompass a couple more things than just the savings. This could be the retirement planning. This could be building up that emergency fund. This could be just a general savings, but this could also be saving for a down payment of a house. This could be for your debt repayment. This could be the retirement. There could be so many things in here that you want to make sure that you do cover. Now, breaking it down a little bit more into the needs, these are the adulting expenses that you cannot escape. That is right. When you look at monthly mortgage payments or rent, groceries, utilities, insurance, loan payments, credit card payments, these are really the things that you're not going to be able to get away from as an adult, short of paying off those loans, paying off those credit cards. A lot of things are always going to be there. For a majority of people, even if you pay off your mortgage, you're still going to have to pay your taxes, of course. Groceries, utilities, insurance, they're going to be there. Even if your car is free and cleared, you have insurance. Even if you have a house, you have insurance. There are things that you're going to have to and kind of be required to keep when it comes to the adulting or the grown-up things that we have. Now, of course, it goes into the wants category. This is our fun spending. This, of course, kind of goes hand in hand with entertainment when you look at subscriptions. And I think really this is kind of crazy when it comes to subscriptions as a nation, really. People are paying north of $200 a month for subscriptions. This can include, Netflix, Disney, all of the streaming services. It can include subscriptions that you have on your phone. It can include gym memberships. There are so many things that are buying for your, $5 here, $7 there, $20 there. We're seeing it now with auto wash places that have our monthly subscriptions. And you start signing up for a lot of these subscriptions, even if you're trying the trial version. When it ends, now you're charged. There's pretty much anything that you can think. And most of them have went to this subscription feature, which is kind of crazy because even looking like I use Adobe Premiere Pro, there is not a one and done where I can just pay an upfront cost and it is done. It is now a subscription-based service, which means I have to pay for it every single month, similar to what we're using here with StreamYard. It is a subscription-based service, meaning we have to buy it every 12 months or re-up it every 12 months. We can't pay for it one single time and it will be done. That is not the way that it means. Now, also spending or saving this category doesn't mean the depravity of not doing anything. When it comes to budgeting, a majority of people have a very, very negative connotation when it comes to budgeting. But honestly, the people that I've seen that budget and the ones that budget well have an exceptional amount of discipline, but also have an exceptional amount of money, which is what I see, guys. When you know exactly where your money is, literally when you get your paycheck, it is the single most powerful thing that you do have. And the ability to keep a majority of that paycheck is really a game changer for a majority of us. So if you like doing something, this could include going out to eat, traveling, regardless of what you want to do, whatever you want to do and whatever you love to do, put it into there, put it into your budget, put it into the spending, make sure you're allocating for it. If you like going to the movies, let's say once a month, then once a month you are allocating money to go to the movies. As long as you're building it into the spending plan, as long as you're putting it into the budget, you can really go and enjoy it in its entirety, 100% guilt-free, meaning that you put your money aside for it. If you have something coming up that is going to be a bigger cost, if it's going to be, let's say, an out of town experience, if you're going to visit friends, if you're going to visit family, if you're going, on vacation, as long as you're budgeting for it, that is it. That is literally the only thing you have to do is make sure that you're budgeting it. And you're really going to budget it in two different ways. Number one is the guilt-free spending. You want to make sure, again, that you're putting money aside for the things that you love to do within the spending category, making sure, again, that your budget isn't so strict and so tight that there's no variation at all with your budget. Trust me, if you do it this way, it is not going to work. You're not going to stick to it. You might give it a month, you might give it two, and literally the budget is going to be out the window. And of course, if you have a significant other, it could be a spouse, even talking to your kids about this, but making sure that you are on the same plan, on the same budget, having the same conversation when it comes to money as you do with another individual. And then, of course, the last category we have here is the savings. This is the big money life goals, what you want to do. This, of course, includes 3 to 6 months of that emergency fund, covering your living expenses, and of course, debt repayment, investing. But this could also be a lot of different factors depending exactly where you are. But these are the big things. If you're looking to pay for, let's say, a down payment for a house, if you're looking for, funding your child's education, if you're looking to retire, if you're looking to invest, paying off debt, of course, is huge. My advice, in kind of a little bit outdated, Dave Ramsey's baby steps do work incredibly well when it comes to debt repayment. It is really a streamlined process, but for a majority of people, they will not follow it and they will not follow it to really what it is to the T. I have a couple variations that I like on his baby steps, but overall, I follow them very, very closely. Again, with a little bit of a variation, I did go ahead and get my company matched before I threw everything into debt, but really going through. And one really trick with this when it comes to savings, when it comes to these money goals, is write them down. Put a date behind them, put an amount, know exactly what you're doing. For instance, if I say, I want to save $10 every week, and every week I want to invest that $10 for the next 12 months, you can go back to that and say, this was the plan. This is where we're at. This is where we ended after those 12-month period that we kind of set. And this is where we're at today. If you've ever went through and you want to have a really fun experiment, go Google a investment compounding interest calculator. And you can see, even if you're investing $10 a week, which means roughly $40 a month, in the course of the time you start working to the time you retire, you'll have an incredible, insane amount of money in there, which again, just that $10 a week, that means $520 a year. You can have a very, very healthy retirement. And you'll notice, even looking at the calculator, you're about 3 to 5 times what the average American has when you get to retirement age, just by saving $10 a week, which again, it's just people don't do this. I actually had a conversation with 2 individuals the other day. One was 31 years of age, one was 35. Neither one of those are contributing to a 401k, no IRAs, no HSAs, literally nothing that is going towards retirement. Now, both of them are in a little bit of a higher career, but overall, they're not saving a penny. So you think of the age 31 and now 35, you're looking at 10 plus years already behind the investment curve, where they've had a company. Both of them work at a larger company. Both of those companies do offer a 401k match, yet both of those individuals are putting zero into the 401k, which means when they get 5, 10, 15 years down the road, if they continue down this path, they are going to have literally nothing for retirement, and they are not going to be able to see any of the compounding that you can actually get from investing. So let's get a little bit more into the spending plan. Now, like we were saying earlier, we have a couple different ways. The 50-30-20 rule for a majority of people don't really work, but the groundwork from this can be really set. Now, this in essence is looking at 50% of your income goes to your needs, 30% goes to wants, and 20% goes into savings. Again, this is something that we've seen through a number of years, but for a majority of people, especially with the rising costs that we see today, it doesn't really sync up anymore. It doesn't really work with the 50-30-20, which the variation or the alteration that we've seen of this is doing like a 60-30-10, or even doing a 50-40-10. So essentially, we're seeing a little less in that very last savings bucket to go ahead and bump up the needs and the wants category. And of course, for a lot of people, this could also be kind of temporary. Something to remember is this doesn't have to be set in stone. 50-30-20, if you're spending 52%, let's say, on needs, it is not something that is set in stone. These categories will vary and they will change a little depending on cash flow, depending on a lot of different things. But what a lot of people do, and I kind of want to break this down when you start looking at the budgeting method, is let's say you're working at a job and you make $50,000. You're really right on top of it. You're doing the 50-30-20. You're saving that 20% away. Then, of course, at that $50,000 job, you get a raise. Now you're making $56,000. With that extra $6,000, people tend to keep up with the Jones, the lifestyle creep. They'll get a raise every single year. That raise is not put towards debt repayment. That raise is not put towards additional savings. They're not upping the 401k contributions. They're not putting more money into HSAs and IRAs. We see the increase, essentially, that goes up, and boom, they just find other things to spend the money on, which again, if you start up front, and we really stress this as a financial counselor, if you start up front with paying yourself first, it is a game changer. So literally, instead of thinking the 50-30-20 rule, so what people do, again, 50% goes into needs, 30% goes into wants, 20% goes into savings, if there's literally anything left at the end of the month to go into savings. So even if you wanted to change this up a little bit, is you could go in and pay yourself first, which means 20% of that is going to go into a retirement account, a savings account, a emergency fund account, a deposit, or an account to build up for a down payment for a house. Putting the 20% first gives you the 80% left over. Essentially, that is what you got to work with. Now, of course, this goes hand in hand with not living outside of your means. If you have 80% of your income, it doesn't mean you can spend 90% of your income, because that extra 10% is brought in by unsecured debt. It's not brought in by credit card spending. You have to live with inside your means. This is literally the basics 101 that they teach the fundamentals when it comes to actually, you earn $100, you spend $110, it's going to run out eventually, and eventually it's going to catch up to you. And as you start living outside of your means, if this continues for an extended amount of time, all of a sudden you start seeing those credit card balances raise. Now you have less money. You start seeing getting higher interest rates because now your credit score is lower. You start seeing your money going out faster. Even if you get raises systematically throughout the year, even if you have more money, essentially your money is being tied up other places because you're paying interest on everything else. Now, for me personally, I do a zero-based budgeting method. I do not like the 50-30-20. And again, as a financial advisor, I really feel like the zero-based budgeting makes a really big difference. The zero-based budgeting, you essentially assign a job or an expense category for every dollar you get. So again, using that same scenario, you have $50,000 coming in, you know where every single dollar is going. Literally every single dollar of that $50,000 that you get, regardless of what it is. If you're taking home 42, 46, whatever it is, 46,000, let's say, just for instance, that $46,000 has an absolute place that it is going. So paying the rent, paying the utility, paying this, paying that, but every single dollar has a place, and every single dollar has a place that I need it to go. So for me personally, that might mean cutting back on some of my expenses, maybe missing a time or two to go out to eat, packing my lunches, because what I'm doing systematically, and again, if you've caught any of my investing videos, is putting money into an investment account so I can grow it, because long-term, I want to create generational wealth for my kids and my grandkids one day, even paying for their education in their entirety, paying off the house, being completely debt-free within the next few years is my strategy. Now, of course, that means I might have to give up some little things here and there. I'm not buying my daily coffee when I go to Starbucks. I'm not going to Dunkin' Donuts all the time, even going out to eat, which is incredibly expensive. You have to cut back in some places. And especially you might have to cut back, even if it is temporary, if you're sitting on a lot of debt. So a lot of people that do carry a significant amount of debt, I really challenge you, go out there, look at all of your debt. You can get your home, your auto, your unsecured loans, your credit cards. Look at all of your debt in its entirety when we're putting it into really the spending plan, and see how much you're paying in interest, period. Just look at the number of interest. Just look at what you're paying in interest to all of your loans, to your credit cards, to your mortgage, to everything in its entirety. What are you paying in interest? Then the correlation between that is how much are you making? How much is being eaten up by interest? For a lot of people, this is an eye-opening experience, because if you're making, let's say, $2,000 a paycheck or $4,000 a month, you see that $1,200 of that is being eaten up in interest. Then I challenge you with, how can you lower your interest? What can you do to get this interest lower? That might be, consolidating debt. That could be even, balance transferring credit cards to get a lower rate for 12 months or 18 months. But it could also be on focusing on that last 20% of the 50-30-20 and paying down the credit cards. Every single time you're not using the credit card and you're paying it down faster, you're paying less interest. And of course, once you get to the point of eliminating those credit cards, you get to keep a lot more of your income. Then with that income, if you start investing it, if you start putting it into high yield savings accounts, if you start putting it into CDs, a lot of different investment vehicles will start paying you. So literally going from one side of borrowing and boom, you're paying interest, to be actually the bank is borrowing your money and they're paying you, which is a really, really good feeling when you can look at multiple income streams. And in my opinion, guys, that is really the only way that it is ever going to be sustainable, is creating and really developing and building multiple income streams. So even when I look right now, I have a full-time job, we get a paycheck from that. I have CDs, we get dividends from that. I have investment accounts, we get dividends from that. Also, the investment accounts are growing. I do YouTube, just like we're doing right now. I get a paycheck from that. Right there is 5 streams of income that we're getting from a bunch of different places. And essentially what I look at, even having money in a high yield savings account, which again, we get interest paid on that. What we're getting on a monthly basis will pay for my cable bill. Well, as we start snowballing it and we're rolling that into a higher interest account, even if we compound it in there, well, now not only is it paying for my cable bill, now it's paying for my phone bill. Boom. the interest that I'm getting from my high yield savings account through M1 Finance is paying for two things. Well, then you get to a point where this kind of snowballs a little bit further, and boom, you start paying for multiple things with different streams of income because I have the ability to create revenue from YouTube. And again, this is my side hustle. I love doing this. Being able to talk to you guys about financial education and literacy is something that I love to do, and I do in my professional career. So if you like it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But again, like we were saying with our zero-based budgeting, just getting back around with the method, set up automatic payments. If you're using the 50-30-20, if you're doing the zero-based budgeting, whatever it is, automate your finances. I cannot stress this for a majority of people. When it comes to the automation of finances, it is the game changer. This could be the 401k, this could be the HSAs, the IRAs, even making car or payments itself, credit card payments, home payments, car payments. You have to make sure that you automate it. It is a absolute game changer. Oh, sweet info. Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, like I said, this is what I love to do. I do the financial education and the financial counseling with a lot of people through the years since I'm a certified financial counselor. And anytime that I get to share the information with you guys, especially on a bigger scale where it's not really just one-on-one, it is really cool to see. So overall, like I said, there's a couple different methods, not only the 50-30-20, but looking at the zero base, there's also an 80-20 budgeting, which again, this is one that I like that is kind of a newer system. So the 80-20 budgeting, 20% of your funds go straight to savings, period. That is it. The other 80% again is what we use for the expenses. And of course, there's a big resurgence. Now, if you're older like I am, back in the 80s and 90s, there was an envelope-based system, and I forget exactly who it was. I know it wasn't Dave Ramsey, but there was an envelope-based system where essentially you had an envelope system where you put cash into. So you had cash for groceries, you had cash for utilities, you had cash for a bunch of different things. You can systematically build and have a cash system where, hey, if I put $100 in cash for, let's say, gas, in the course of the month, I only spent $80. I have $20 left in that envelope, which I can allocate somewhere else. And again, this is the fundamentals. This is the basic of budgeting. Now, a lot of places also, since we've kind of went to the cashless system, more of the debit card, a lot of people have actually went to electronic envelope system. So again, it's kind of the same theory where you might have a couple different accounts. Let's say you have a couple different savings accounts where you're housing the money that is going to be for a very, very specific expense, which what it does, and again, not only the psychological factor of spending cash, which trust me, if you haven't done it, especially if you're in a younger generation, take a $100 bill out of the bank, go spend it. See exactly how it feels when you pay for your groceries with cash, when you pay for, let's say, your gas with cash. When you do that, you will find that the psychological factor is still there, guys. It is ingrained in our heads. When you pay for cash, it has an entirely different feeling. Trust me, I know this from, just being a little bit older, where debit cards and credit cards were not so prevalent. It feels entirely different when you pay for something with cash versus paying with just a credit card. It is an entirely different feeling. So guys, overall, the bottom line in this is whatever method you choose, it is really up to you. And again, this comes with the accountability piece. If you're watching the video, chances are you might not have a spending plan. If you do, that's absolutely great. You're ahead of probably about 90% of people that I do see on the financial side when it comes to a spending plan. There is no one size fit all. There's no budget that is going to work for everyone. If you try a budgeting method, like I said, with the 50-30-20, the zero-based budgeting, the 80-20, whatever it is, try a system that works. As long as you're taking the next step in creating that accountability piece, when it comes to the money that you have coming in, it is going to be a game changer for the rest of your life when you start budgeting. And of course, when you start investing, a lot of people ask me all the time, when should I start investing? If you're asking that question, it should have been yesterday. It should be today. Absolutely, you should be investing. And honestly, if you ever want to create wealth, investing in a stock portfolio, going in with ETFs, there is a very, very tried and true way, which even when you look at millionaires, so thinking again, kind of big picture, a lot of research that I do, almost 90% of individuals that are millionaires came from nothing, came from literally zero, didn't have any golden spoon, didn't have, a big estate account or a big, parents weren't filthy rich that just gave the money. 90% of millionaires today are self-made millionaires, and a majority of those millionaires are from investing in the stock market. So again, when it comes to investing, guys, it is really something that you have to start doing today and making sure that you're allocating funds to that investment. That is the reason why I stress and I really do drive the importance of not only creating a spending plan, but also setting yourself up for success and paying yourself first. It is really a big thing. Even if you're putting away 4% into that, 401k match, making sure that you're paying yourself first. And then essentially whatever money you have left is what you're going to live on in a month-to-month basis, but also looking and really finding out when you're evaluating your expenses, categorizing the expenses, where not only one, you can save money. So again, shopping around for different insurance, you could possibly get cheaper. You could cut out some of those subscriptions you're not using. Anything that you're freeing up on the expense side is something that you can gain on the investment side, that you can gain when you start getting into that emergency fund and when you start getting into that savings. It is going to make a big difference. As long as you know where your money is going, then my job is halfway done, because of course you have to stick with it and you have to make sure that you know exactly where the plan is. Now, of course, once you go through all the steps, you know the method you're going to use, this becomes incredibly, incredibly easy to do. Once you start looking at all of those fixed expenses, variable expenses, again, are going to change little by little. But once you've done this once, twice, even 3 times, you'll see exactly how easy it is to really create a spending plan and knowing exactly where your money is. This also does give you the ability, when you have something coming up, like I said, if you have Christmas spending, if you know a vacation spending, or vacation is coming up, you can systematically put some extra money away into that savings account, making sure that it's earmarked for exactly what you want to do. I had an individual that said, I've always wanted to go overseas. I want to go on vacation. I'm probably going to need around $12,000. Okay, let's break it down. What's the timeline look like? If they want to go, let's say in the next 2 years, okay, they need $12,000. How much are we saving a paycheck to make this happen? That way, when they get ready for that vacation, they already have the money in its entirety saved, sitting in an account earmarked for that vacation, and they know they're going to take it 100% because the money is already sitting there really waiting for it. And like I was saying, when it comes to things that you love, make sure that you are building them into the budget. It really does make a big difference. So guys, that is going to do it for today's live stream. Thank you guys for joining us. I love doing these. It's very, very cool. I know every now and then we get some questions about investing and budgeting, but overall, I created a spending plan myself. Once you get into it and once you kind of get used to it, it makes it super, super easy. Me personally, like I said, zero-based budgeting is exactly what I use, putting all of my excess funds into an investment account, and it is growing like a debt avalanche, which is awesome. We're starting to see a lot of dividends coming in. We're starting to see a lot of growth combined with the dividends that are coming in and really building out the investment portfolio. So again, guys, that's going to do it for today's live stream. One question, rent or mortgage? Jordan, that really is very, very dependent on your situation. So what I mean by that is if you're in a job where you're staying, if you're a single individual, if mortgages are expensive, and a lot of people don't see the cost of mortgage. You have your principal, you have your insurance, you'll also have your portion of interest. You'll also have to do the maintenance and repair on the property. You'll also have to have all of your utilities in the property. There are so many costs that come with the mortgage. It is a very, very big commitment. For a lot of people that I know, they choose to rent just for the simple instance, again, that they don't want really the commitment. They don't want to be locked down to one specific area. They don't want to worry about the maintenance. That's also why not only renting, we also see a lot of condos that are being built around here because, again, a lot of people they want more of a free, open lifestyle where they don't have to worry about shoveling the snow and cutting the grass and repairing things when they break and, fixing the roof, everything else. It's a really, really, and I dig in and do some research before you ever consider a mortgage. Even where I work at a credit union, we offer free home buying seminars so people can really understand kind of the pros and cons with it. Because again, it is super specific and very unique to your situation. And a lot of it comes to not only the financial situation, but also what is your commitment? Do you want to stay in a mortgage? And again, most people do mortgages for 30 years. Do you want to stay exactly where you are for 30 years? It is a good neighborhood. Does it have good schools? Are your friends and family local? There are so many things that come in. And again, renting, I feel like a lot of people had a lot of negative stigmas when it comes to renting places, which I feel like have kind of been alleviated. But also with rent, you have to be careful because some of them are super, super expensive. They built an apartment complex actually right behind where I work. Rent for a 1-bedroom place where I'm at is $1,400. When you get into a two-bedroom, it is $1,850. Now, looking at that cost at $1,850 for a 2-bedroom, I have a 4-bedroom home and I don't even pay anywhere near that per month for the place. Now, of course, utility costs, things like that, a lot of them are still going to be in the rental units that you have. It is still going to be in the mortgage. So hand in hand, I'm actually saving money because we do have an incredibly low mortgage rate. But overall, for me, kids, everything else, it made sense to go ahead and buy. And of course, like I said, I am paying a lot less for a mortgage that we don't even have for 30 years than most people are paying in rent, which again is kind of incredible. So Jordan, definitely if you have some more questions, I rent a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath house for $1,160 a month. That is a killer, Jordan. Like I said, here, 2-bedroom, and literally this is 2-bedroom with no amenities. We're not talking an exercise facility. We're not talking a swimming pool. We're talking nothing on some of these places, and they are charging $1,850 for a 2-bedroom, which is kind of astronomical. Even the average that I see out here for just like a regular apartment, again, some of the ones around here run from about $1,200 to $1,500, which again is kind of crazy. And then again, you don't have a lot of those amenities in there. But all right, guys, like I was saying, that is going to do it for creating a spending plan. Yeah, some of the places, Jordan, and again, if you're mortgaging instead of rent, you're not building the equity, but overall, you don't quite have the commitment there. So definitely take some time, see exactly where you want to be. And honestly, going through and setting out your finances, not only that is really what do you want to be? Is home ownership really what you want to do? If it's super important to you, absolutely looking to get into the mortgage game, getting a home. I think, again, it's been kind of a stigma that everyone needs to to own a home. It's been a dream of everyone. We've always been taught, having the wraparound porch with the White House and the picket fence. A lot of people, for home ownership, it's not what it's about. And people don't want to do that anymore. They want the free lifestyle. They can travel where they want. They can do what they want. If they got a relocation, they don't have to buy a house and sell a house and move all their stuff. It's kind of changed. Even in, the 40 years that I've been here, it's changed a lot from everyone wanting to own a house to now I'm even getting to coworkers that don't want to own a house in their entirety. They are much more happier just renting places and then moving and going wherever they want to without having to worry about the home aspect of it. But all right, guys, like I said, we got a little, that's why I love talking to you guys and going through these live streams, but definitely how to create a spending plan. Let me know in the comments if you guys do have a spending plan, and it's great to do these live streams. And as always, thank you guys for watching.